We are the Catalan Independentist Resistance, and you are listening to a new update from Radio Hadrian in Free Catalonia.
Hello, good afternoon from Radio Hadrian. This is our very first broadcast and we welcome you. We're broadcasting to you from north of the border, north of Hadrian's Wall, courtesy of KA Radio. Okay, so what are we about, Radio Hadrian? We're not a music program. We may bring music to you, but we are certainly not a music program. We've set up this program in order to bring you the truth about the Scottish and the Catalan independence movements. The truth which mainstream media don't tell and won't want us to talk about. We are very opportune in the timing of our first broadcast because this is hot on the heels of the UK general election with very interesting results and a loss of seats for the SNP. Whilst they still have a reasonable number of seats, they have lost enough seats to cause a lot of discomfort in Scotland. And why this has happened is questionable. It's highly likely that this general election was rigged, but we'll go into that perhaps later. The SNP have also lost two key figures in their Westminster numbers. That is Alex Salmond, former First Minister, and Angus Robertson, current Deputy Leader of the SNP. Both of these people are members of the Queen's Privy Council, and that really is questionable, to be part of a party that purports to want independence and be on the Queen's Advisory Council. Okay, so over the coming weeks or months, we're going to be bringing you discussions, chats, information, and interviews with interesting and relevant people from both the Catalan and the Scottish independence movements. The focus for me is obviously on the Scottish perspective, and my interest in this goes back to before the rigged referendum of 2014, when I began questioning things that were being put into place in anticipation of the referendum. I began to be very, very cynical. Prior to that, I had been a massive supporter of the SNP and a lifelong member of it. I'm no longer that. I'm no longer either of those things. And so I began questioning things. And of course, when you question things, mainstream media don't like it. And a lot of people who support the SNP can be quite abusive towards anybody who criticizes the SNP. So what am I going to talk about with you? I'm going to talk about the Yes campaign. I'm going to talk about historic Edinburgh Agreement, which wasn't worth the paper it was written on. I'm going to talk about the rigging of the referendum, about the fixed betting that took place on the outcome of the referendum. I'm going to talk about what took place after the referendum, Nicola Sturgeon becoming First Minister, Alex Salmond's resignation, the meteoric rise to superstar status of Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, which at the time I likened it to Beyonce, as Nicola went on tour giving speeches and really and truly just gave all the appearances of being like a rock star. Then I'm going to go on to the events since then, when we've apparently had a strong voice in Westminster, courtesy of the 56 MPs that the Scottish voters put into Westminster in 2015. And that was the last time I voted for the SNP. That was the last time I put my faith in them. Although at the time I didn't have faith, but I thought, well, let's see what happens. There was nobody else to vote for. And so over those 2 years, we have watched the SNP in Westminster do nothing for independence. Absolutely nothing. In 2 years, nothing. Albeit some of them are good MPs for their local constituencies, but they're not doing anything for independence. And they are part of the Scottish National Party, which is the Independence Party in Scotland. In those 2 years, we have watched all sorts of shenanigans going on with the Westminster MPs, who I have to say are playing a very nice game along with the establishment in the UK. They are part of the Westminster establishment. They are part of this game. They have no intention of delivering independence to Scotland. They are dangling a carrot in front of independence-minded people. And it's always a game of, yes, maybe we'll have a referendum. Oh, we'll wait till this has happened. We'll wait till this has happened. Oh, well, we can't have a referendum now because of the outcome of the general election. There's always a reason. why it's going to be put off and put off and put off. But the real reason is that they have no intention of delivering independence to Scotland. The only way Scotland is going to get independence is by the people, through the people rising up and declaring independence, going for UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence. And no, this does not imply that Scotland becomes another Northern Ireland. That is not what it would be about. There are peaceful means of declaring independence. Through this programme, I hope that we can stimulate and motivate people to start opening their eyes and looking at the reality of the independence movement and the corruption and the sad fact that a lot of people put faith in members of their MPs, SNP MPs, to deliver independence, and they put continual faith in it. And that faith is being let down time and time and time again. The SNP are betraying Scotland. They're not looking after independence. They may have done some small things, some good things in their time, but they are not doing what people want them to do, and that is to deliver independence. So this is the way this program is going to go. So I hope you will find this interesting and stimulating, and it will make you open your eyes. We're going to be open to feedback, always a good thing, and suggestions. Any suggestions at all. Feedback, constructive criticism, please. And we'll set up a forum for that to take place. We're not a talkback radio program, so we're not going to give you a phone number that you can call in and have a chat with us. We can't do that. But we will set up a forum, a platform or something like that, so that you can have your say. Because this program is for you, it's for the people. This is to generate a people's movement, so that Scotland's children of the future have a free country. Next week, week 2, I'll bring you an interview with David. In 2016, early May, David embarked on a hunger strike as a protest about the corruption in the Catalan and the Scottish independence movements. His efforts were stopped very suddenly when he was incarcerated in a psychiatric hospital here in Barcelona. That's a story he's going to tell us next week. It's only served to make him stronger. They didn't beat him down. He's still here and stronger than ever to take the fight further. So when are we going to be broadcasting? On Sundays at 3 p.m. in Scottish time, 4 p.m. in Catalan time. So we very much hope that you will join us. Very much look forward to your company. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Scotland and Catalonia, and to everybody listening to us anywhere in the world. I'm David Raventós. I'm here to tell you truths about the Catalan and Scottish independence processes, and also about big things in the world we live that are not told to us in the way they happen, made up preparation to keep us part of the system and avoid that we ever become free. I want to thank KA Radio for this opportunity, because it's actually a matter of life or death for some of us. We know for a fact that we are being censored, and the things you're going to hear almost every Sunday in KA Radio cannot be said or written or broadcasted anywhere in Catalonia, private or public media. We know this for certain because we've spoken with journalists who write in newspapers who've told us that absolutely nothing that is contrary to this make-believe Catalan independence process that is a merry-go-round that's taking us nowhere. Nothing against this process can be said in Catalan. And more specifically, we know that my case and the things that happened to me last year when I was on a hunger strike and I was criminally interned in a hospital to silence me, they cannot be broadcasted in TV3, which is Catalan television. It's the television of choice for most people who are for independence in Catalonia. And we have it from 3 different sources. When my friend Gerard Aigny asked the camera person of TV3, the Catalan television, if they knew about it, they said, of course we know about David Raventós. And then he asked, and why don't you talk about him in TV3? And they said, well, you'd better talk to our bosses. And we have confirmed that from 2 extra sources. So it's total blackout. So yes, it's happening here in Europe, in European Union, in a so-called democracy. But one of the things we'll tell you in these programs here is that Spain never became a democracy. There was a monkey business of a transition in 1975 where Franco said, we have left everything tight and good tight. It's a good tie, it's a good knot. What in Spanish would be, lo hemos dejado todo atado y bien atado. So as we say, no real transition to democracy happened in Spain. Nobody went to prison. Nobody had to apologize for what they did during 40 years. Nobody lost the money they had made on the back of innocent Spanish and Catalan people. And now, here, from Radio Hadrian, this program that bears homage to Radio Pirenaica, which was a radio that from the 50s to the 70s was broadcasting the truths that you couldn't broadcast in Francoist Spain. Now we're going to tell the truth to Catalans, to Scots, and to everybody there in the world. But first of all, let me introduce myself. As you know, I'm David Raventós. I became pro-independentist in Catalonia at the end of the 80s when I entered university in law school. There I became member of Federació Nacional d'Estudiants de Catalunya, or FENEC, which was the pro-Indi student union there. And there I met people like Oriol Junqueras, who's now the deputy prime minister in Catalonia, or Josep Rull, who's a cabinet minister in Catalonia, or Francesc Homs, who until very recently he was the main speaker of one of the main Catalan parties in the parliament in Madrid, or Joan Vives, who's the real kingmaker in Catalan politics, and is one of the persons who almost no Catalan knows, and that we're going to discover who this very fishy, dark character is. Or Alexandra Palousier, his then girlfriend, and now a famous panelist and policymaker and famous person. Or David Madí, who was the spin doctor and main strategist of Artur Mas, which is the former president of Catalonia. Well, all these people, we shared responsibility in FENEC. I was there, I was vice president of the student union, I was the founding vice president of European Law Students Association Barcelona, and had every position you can have in university. That might not seem important, and it's not like with any interest or arrogance, because I'm really just a normal person, but we can only count on normal person in this, because everybody we love and respect works for the other side. If I'm saying these things, is to put in context why all the things that have happened to me the last 3 years have happened. Imagine somebody who started with all the movers and shakers that ran Catalonia, who's actually saying that they work for the enemy and that everything they've told us, 7.5 million Catalans, it's a lie. Well, that's what happens. I'm not a panelist. I'm not somebody who has opinions. As far as I know, the only whistleblower in the Catalan process. And that's what makes me a threat for them, even when I'm a normal person, because they fear normal persons. Because the deception they've pushed onto 13 million Catalans and Scots is of enormous proportions. It's like we have an elephant in a room, and everybody who should see this elephant of referendum in Scotland and 3 years and nothing really happening in Catalonia, they don't want to see it. So the first person that tells that the emperor is naked, like the emperor new dress tale, is a serious threat. That's why, well, after dedicating myself to selling franchises for 10 years, back in December 2013, when the then Catalan president Artur Mas decided to make a double-tier question about, do you want Catalonia to have an own state? And in the affirmative, do you want this to be an independent one? Well, that question beggars belief, and that question made it actually impossible to hold a referendum for independence in Catalonia in 2000. So then, at the last minute, at the trick of a hat, they had to turn it into a participation process, which is something very typical here in Catalonia. They invent words that tell the world that this process is not serious. So everybody who runs the world, every secret service, every politician, every media knows that nothing's really serious here. It's just an enormous lie of consumption only for the Catalan people. Well, when they made this double question, which is against the rulings of the Commission of Venice, which is the one that is relevant when you organize a referendum, I stood against it. And then the nightmare began. They started to insult me in social media. I started receiving calls from people that hadn't called me for 20 years, telling me to stop giving problems. Some politicians called me and tried to stop me. And, well, then I stood my ground. And then the threats went up. And then so-called pro-indie people started slandering me. They said they would bring me to court for sexual harassment, and they said they would invent proof. And as I didn't surrender, I didn't quit, they started sending a slandering letter to my contacts in Facebook saying that I was a sexual harasser. And then they also threatened me in the street, somebody who's supposed to have been in prison for belonging to Terra Lliure, which is a kind of terrorist group or armed band. These words are always difficult because they're loaded with meaning. So they started doing all these kind of things to me to stop me. I didn't. I'm a person who's been in Convergència, Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya, Reagrupament, and Solidaritat, which are 4 political parties which are more or less independentist. At least their grassroots are. Sadly, and I think I speak also for Scotland, 99% of the grassroots want independence. But alas, there's always this famous 1%, or 1 per 1,000, who accidentally happens to be on the decision-making position and on top that doesn't want it. So just to prove why I'm going through the things I'm going, back in 2012, with my friend Ramon Carné, and one of the real heroes of Catalonia, that one day, one of the unsung heroes that one day will be recognized, we had interviews with members of the 4 pro-indie parties trying to get them to go together to elections. And in the end, it wasn't possible because the Vice President or Deputy Prime Minister today, Oriol Junqueras, said that it wasn't possible. So it didn't happen. And all this state of things I'm trying to synthesize, and we're going to be more fluent in the next programs, and my English possibly will get better along the way. But all this state of things brought me to start a hunger strike the 3rd of May 2016. And this hunger strike was for UDAE, both in Scotland and Catalonia. And the reasons for merging Catalonia and Scotland is because no matter what they tell us, both countries have a lot in common. We both lost our freedom 300 years ago. Both countries are having a growing independence movement. Both countries are part of European Union and NATO, which means that it is very difficult for us to become independent through normal process, because you don't leave a NATO member state just because the people march and vote and have saltires or esteladas flying in their balconies. It takes a bit more imagination and sadly a bit more courage. So this state of thing made me to bind Scotland and Catalonia and start a hunger strike to denounce both the situation in Scotland and Catalonia. At that moment, there was an overall majority in Holyrood, and there was 56 out of 59 in Westminster. So I think Scotland has the sad record of having had the biggest majority for independence never to bring independence. So it makes you wonder if the SNP is really a party for independence. I don't know, it's like somebody says that he's a vegetarian or a vegan, but stuffs himself up 3 times a day in a fast food restaurant eating burgers or any kind of meat. Well, somebody who can make independence and doesn't make it, it's a fake independentist. Anybody not suffering from cognitive dissonance could tell you that. So I started this hunger strike, and I started denouncing people left, right, and center, and I managed to be in the most famous program radio in Barcelona, and they interviewed me, and after that, silence. Absolute silence. Well, obviously somebody picked up phones and made the precise calls, so it was a total blackout. And we started making videos about Catalonia and Scotland, but nobody came. We were making a press conference and nobody came. Only 2 newspapers came, which names I won't honor by mentioning, but they slandered me. They made interviews to me, and then they pretended that I was not really doing a hunger strike, and they slandered me. They changed my words because they were trying to mock me. Okay, because back then the plan was already to make me look like a madman. And then on the 14th day of a hunger strike, a friend brought me to a hospital to have my level checked. I have to say that for 3 years they had been telling me if I didn't stop my fight, they would get in contact with family members and they would get me locked to silence me. And a few days before it happened, some so-called independentists were spreading words that I was mad, and they were saying it to my friends. They were spreading it in social media. And they were mentioning people that had been with me in Fenech, in the student union I mentioned before, 25 years before. And then my nightmare really started. it was the birthday of my daughter, and I went to the hospital to get a checkup, and precisely to confirm that I had never had anything to do with psychiatry. And they locked me in a box. They took away my phone. They communicated me, and they interrogated me in a tremendously weird way, almost asking me if I saw green men and if I thought Elvis was alive and kicking. And it was total setup. It was a trap. I was decreed to stay there by a Spanish judge, and I was kept there for 2 months with the wrong diagnosis, with experimenting with me with medicines, like some medicines like Depakina and Risperidone, one of which is for epilepsy, which I've never suffered from. They were playing with a cocktail up and down and changing. My diagnosis changed, and they kept me there, chemically tortured for 2 months, and that's it. For 2 months, closed in a mental institution for daring to tell the truth of Catalonia and of Scotland, because as far as I know, I'm the first person in Catalonia to talk about the referendum. And after that, I was for 3 months, I felt like a vegetable. I had no urge to live, and I didn't move, and I felt like never suicidal. And I want to clarify this: I'll never commit suicide. I'm never gonna make it easy for them. I'm gonna go to any lengths to bring down this corrupt regime that is killing, threatening, and putting people who are right in mental institutions. You'll have to kill me, but I'm not gonna make it for you, okay? We're gonna win this, and these people deserve independence. Sorry that my introduction got a bit long. I hope I haven't put everybody to sleep. But I need to clarify who I am so you can give some credit to the things that you're gonna hear in the programs to come. Not only about Scotland or Catalonia, but there's a lot of things that normally you cannot hear in mainstream media. About 9/11, about 11th of March 2004 in Madrid, which was the Spanish 9/11, which was also not what they've told us. You're going to hear about the truth about AIDS, which is a tremendous scandal and crime, very different from what they've told us it is. You're going to hear about the criminal use of non-scientific psychiatry, as my own case proves, where psychiatry is a domination tool that they can use to put you in a hospital, in a mental place and silent. You're going to hear about the true story about Columbus and the discovery of America. Let's call it discovery because there was people there, so it's a wrong name, and also the Chinese and the Vikings and lots of people have been there. But what is known as the discovery of America is total forgery of history, so most things they've told us about. Possibly I'm not going to get a lot of Italian friends when we talk about this, because Columbus was not from Genoa and he was not Italian. But on the other hand, we might bring some solace to native Indians that get a bit bored with Columbus in the way it's happening nowadays in our States of America. So these next days, or in the programs to follow, we're going to talk a lot about the bad guys that are making independence almost impossible. Because as they said, we made it because we didn't know it was impossible. Independence is going to come to Catalonia. Independence is going to come to Scotland. And I don't think it's going to take a lot of months. It only won't happen through the processes as they are devised. I want to talk about heroes today, Catalan and also Scottish heroes of the independence movement. I want to talk about Joan Carretero, who started his own party, but has been brought down by the same people who have been acting on his back and bringing him down, setting up clone parties and bursting his regroupament. I want to mention Ramon Carné, my friend, an entrepreneur who set up Cercle Català de Negocis, which was the first Catalan lobby for independence, and he was changed by somebody who, in my opinion, works for Spain, and they did everything to make him stop what he did. So I want to honor Ramon Carné. I also want to have a mention for Carles Mascorp, which was candidate to be mayor in the city of Girona here in Catalonia, and he and his family was threatened with death, and he decided to quit, and that accidentally ushered in Carles Puigdemont, which 10 years on, and also in a very strange assembly where members of a splinter party drew 1,500 to 1,500. And then Carles Puigdemont, 10 years after being lucky enough to have somebody who was threatened with death, bang, he becomes president of Catalonia only with the votes of 36 anti-system coup members. And that was it. So it was a silent or velvet coup. So I wanted to remember Carles Mascorp. Also to Enrique Insa, which was one of the founders of Assemblea Nacional Catalana, short ANC, nothing to do with African National Congress. but which is the grassroots movement supposedly not run by political parties. Well, Enrique Insa was one of the founders, but he found out some very wrong shenanigans inside ANC, Asamblea Nacional Catalana, and now he's, I wouldn't say disappeared, but hard to find and not in the process anymore. I want to mention Luis Botinas, who in his program La Gota Catalana, not only he talks about Catalan history, but he defended my case while nobody else did so. Or Amadeu Clavé, who has been threatened and blackmailed into stop talking about me when I was locked inside the mental institution, so he also deserves to be mentioned, Amadeu. To Andreu Mas del Blanc, who's broken this censorship and has risked his job and maybe more by doing an article saying how politicians stole independence from the people. So, homage to Andreu Mas del Blanc. To Gerard Aimí, my friend and companion, who never deserted me, and he tried to knock every door, and all the doors of people who are supposed to be there for independence were locked or closed in his face. And most of all to Delia Forrest, my partner, who helped me go through 2 very terrible months there in the hospital and 3 months worse than that after that happened. But there's millions of heroes without name, both in Catalonia and Scotland. I'm thinking now of the millions of grassroots in Asamblea Nacional Catalana, the grassroots members in Convergència, now PDeCAT, the grassroots members in Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya, the grassroots members in CUP. All these people, some of them pensioners or people working from home or unemployed people, students, workers, these millions of people who are canvassing and marching in Catalonia and Scotland. Those peoples are the heroes of independence. And in Scotland, I want to mention my friend Ian Tuff, the last Jacobite, who also standing up a corrupt regime in Scotland and who was trying to find a way out of the corrupt referendum system and help you declare independence. To all of them, just say that we're doing this for you. Some of us are not going to surrender and we're not going to stop until we bring independence. This is for you and we're going to make it, no matter how hard they make it for us. Because independence belongs to the people and the people will take. It's a good moment to start this program because it's coincided with general elections in the UK and the Catalan date of the question for the referendum. About general elections, I'll just say that even when the SNP have lost 21 seats, both according to its manifesto in 1997, according even to Margaret Thatcher, which one wouldn't be suspect or one be suspicious of being pro-Scottish independence, said that the only thing you need to declare independence is a majority of pro-Indi seats in Westminster coming from Scotland. Well, that is as true with 35 as with 56. So it's just a matter of declaring UDA, because UDA is the only way to independence. Let's give some facts. 107 countries have declared independence by UDI. Well, none of them have declared independence after having a first referendum that was rigged and winning it in a second referendum. So I think that it's clear, 107 to 0, that intelligence and love of independence is pointing to UDA. And I won't go much farther into general election in UK because there's been enough analysis on this. But it's enough force to declare independence. One thing I'll say is, for those of you who are sad because you've lost Alex Halman and Angus Robertson in Westminster, there's a silver lining in that, as always. Think that there's 2 less members of the Privy Council representing Scotland from then on. But then again, think a bit more, because only thinking, we need to think, we don't need to follow, we need to be one-person armies, we need to be free thinkers, and we need to open our eyes. How can you be at the same time a leader of Scottish independence and member of the Privy Council? It beggars belief. About the question in Catalonia, I'll try not to bore you with all the reasons why it doesn't matter what they said. Everybody is happy now in Catalonia because we have a date and we have a question. But the problem, as with everything in life, it's about timing. We should have done a referendum 3.5 years ago, and they decided to make an opinion poll. So now we have a date and a question, which is the 1st of October, with a question which is, do you want Catalonia to be an independent state under the political system of a republic? And the question is, no way in Catalonia can hear what I'm going to say now, because actually you get in a blacklist and you never work, never get in Catalonia. The question is, we've lost 3.5 years, we've lost 70,000 million euros in tax deficit in the last 3.5 years, we've lost 40 points difference in favor of independence. And they didn't sign anything. These people appeared and said, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but they didn't sign anything. So it's just like a small screen. They didn't comment what percentage we need for winning, and something which is really a scandal for me. It was really weird. They were announcing this morning, but the morning papers on the Unionist side already knew what the question was and what the date was. So it makes you think if the Spanish State Department has sent the question both to Spanish newspapers and to Catalan politicians, so they could announce it at the same time. But then, last but not least, is the question of mentioning a republic. I mean, I prefer republic to monarchy any day of the week, but that's not the issue, because the Republicans was the red side in the Civil War, and a lot of old people associate republic with Civil War. So what's the need of calling it a republic? Republic is on top of that. It's propaganda or publicity of one political party, which is Republican Left of Catalonia, which is ERC or ERC, as we say here. So why should they make propaganda of one of the parties? Bit fishy. And this is about independence. So the most relevant one, and I don't want to bore you with things, the important thing is the grass always looks greener on the other side, and that's why we need to be global. We have to act local, but we have to have a global vision. They're deceiving Scots by telling them, oh, we wish we were like the Catalans. They march and they have millions on the street and they have their own media and they have everything. And Scots people wish they were Catalan. And in Catalonia is the contrary. Oh, we wish we had Democrats like David Cameron who will let them make a referendum. But then it's a referendum. So we need to open our minds and we need to realize that it's all a fraud. They're taking us for the biggest ride of our lives, 13 million Europeans, and we need to open our eyes. And it's not about referendums. Quebec lost twice, Scotland lost once, Catalonia is about to lose, so no referendum brings independence. To finish with this question about mentioning a republic in a referendum of independence, two wrongs don't make a right. Spanish were forced to accept Francoist monarchy, Juan Carlos, a guy with lots of sex affairs and money issues that are not clear, and his son-in-law should have been in prison, but he was set free. He's supposed to be in prison, but he's living the life in Switzerland, and all these things were bundled into the constitution. So there was not a real choice. Now we cannot do the contrary. A republic I favor, but it shouldn't be linked with independence. Independence first, and we cannot divide ourselves. We need everybody who wants independence to gather momentum and bring independence about. And then it's for the people of Catalonia to decide in an ulterior or posterior referendum if they want republic or if they want monarchy or whatever form they choose to have. On another order of things, it's important to link Scotland and Catalonia because there's a number of persons which are supposed to work for independence, and they have all these nice gatherings and they meet in Scotland or Catalonia or Flanders, everything, most of the times under the umbrella of ICEC, International Commission for European Citizens. But these people that go by the names of Humza Yousaf, Shona McAlpine, Brendan Angus McNeil, or another order of things, Stephen Noon, who was the head strategist of the Yes campaign. They don't work for independence. On the Catalan side, there's Joan Vives, which I've known for 25 years, and it took me 23 years to understand that. I have no problem saying that for sure he works against Catalan independence, infiltrated in this process. And the other two happen to be his university time girlfriend, Alessandra Pelousier, and his new partner, Anarque. So it's very cozy and very nice and dandy. Well, these people, Anarque appears frequently in media, and she was, last time I checked, contributor to Bella Caledonia. All them, they have gatherings, and they come to Scotland and they lie about Catalonia, and they come to Catalonia and they lie about Scotland. And I would like to mention here something which is relevant and which goes about Stephen Noon. Stephen Noon, for those of you who don't know, was the head strategist of the Yes campaign in the referendum or referendum or neverendum in 2014. And he came to give a conference in Barcelona, and I don't think he expected to have nobody who knew a bit about the Scottish referendum. So he gave a very rehearsed conversation in the presence of Alessandra Pelousier, which I've known for 25 years. And with Joan Vives, this very dark character, which we'll discover in programs to come, how he's the kingmaker of Catalan politics, while 99.9% of people don't know who he is. And before the time of selfies and new technologies, it was very hard to find a picture of him, as is normal with a spy. as he is, he was at the door, like, as always does, checking who comes in, out, who talks with who, and all these things that information services like to gather. And there Stephen Noon was one of the 40 people attending, and he started saying how we almost won the referendum. And he mentioned, oh, what a pity that the BBC was biased, and what a pity we don't have our own media, or how the vow kind of took the indecisive people to the no side, and if we had had media, and they threatened people that were from other countries. Well, all those things, though being true, are not the real reason the referendum was lost. And he also never mentioned UDI, and he said with a lot of foresight that the next possibility for a referendum would be in the eventual case of Scotland voting different than England would about Brexit. Well, it happened, and referendum is supposed to be on the table again. And he gave us this very well-rehearsed speech. The problem for him was when I took the microphone after he and said, like, very nice for giving us the official explanation, but as so many other times, the official truth is a complete lie, because I said, yes, the people of Scotland voted for independence. The betting houses tell us that the odds were totally what it happens when somebody has inside information. You had people from England betting £900,000 to get only 300,000, something that was supposed to be even. Who would bet on a heads or tails 3-1 when, unless you know that it's both heads? So it was rigged, and everybody who's in the betting world knows 76% of people voted bet for yes, and there were Scottish people, and only a minority voted for no, and that happened to be English people. That's insider trading, and even a company paid bets before the referendum. So it's rigged. Walks like a duck, quacks, and seems like a duck. So it must be a duck. And I told him also about the tampering with postal votes and the blank ballots, and no exit polls, no local counting, no chain of custody. Well, this Stephen Noon almost had a fit there and there. I mean, he started moving in a chair. I thought he was going to collapse, and he didn't answer any of my questions, and he ran away from me as soon as he could. So for me, there's no doubt that Stephen Noon works for Westminster. That's my opinion. If I had to risk my life, I would bet on it. And the truth of this is very relevant, because the head strategist of the Yes campaign and policymaker of the SNP doesn't get chosen by a lot of people. It must have been 3 or 4 people right at the top who chose him to be head strategist. Well, you cannot win a referendum when your head strategist works for the enemy. And that's about it. We're gonna mention other Scottish people that are relevant in the so-called way to independence or road to independence. And but today I would like to talk about the death of Muriel Casals, which is the Catalan Willie McRae, a death that has been made pass as an accident, but those who have dared to investigate it, we know better. First of all, and in these programs, we're also gonna try to decode. They manipulate us in such a way that the powers that be, they not only have police and judges and psychiatrists and hospitals and media and everything. They have everything. So they manipulate us. They have social psychologists. They have sociologists. And they know how to manipulate us, and they work at it. So they always tell us that we have to prove everything. Well, they don't prove things. They brought us to war in Iraq without the proof on weapons of mass destruction. And they promise that they're going to create jobs or bring down taxes or something, and they never provide proof. It's just their narrative. They say that, and they never have to prove anything. So that's not true. I'm sorry. We don't need to bring proof that the referendum was rigged. We don't. because we're not equal. An individual person is not equal to the United Kingdom power. It's the other way around, and it's them that have the burden of proof. UK had to provide a system that made rigging impossible, with exit polls, no tampering with postal votes, no IDOCs from a Tory member of parliament being in charge of it, not all these things. It's their obligation to make a system that is clean and not open to rigging. This is not equal sides. This is not court. This is politics. We are not proving something in court. We're telling the people the truth. And this applied to the case of Muriel. They say, oh, what proof do you have? Catalonia is not a democracy, and it's inside Spain, which is not a democracy. So we have to see these things as under a dictatorship. And I'm going to give you the main facts about Muriel Casals. And I think it's the first time that people in Catalonia are going to hear very relevant things about Muriel Casals, which is one of the most loved people in the independence movement. Muriel Casals, which had a life of belonging to PSUC, which was a socialist party which put together everybody who was against Franco, she became relevant for independence when she became the president of Òmnium Cultural. Òmnium Cultural is an institution that has nowadays around 40,000 members, which is supposed to defend Catalan culture. But from 2010, in 2010, it was the first 1 million people march in the streets of Barcelona, when the Spanish Constitutional Court, which would be equivalent to Supreme Court in other countries, brought down to pieces the statute, or it's the covenant that puts the relationship between Spain and Catalonia. That's our frame of law frame of how things work. And that was smashed by Spain. So the people in Catalonia were angry. And for the first time, the cry or the shouts of independence were heard in Barcelona. And it was Òmnium Cultural that organized this demonstration. And Muriel Casals was just president then. Then we had more than 1 million people march in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that's going to get us into the Guinness World of Records, but that hasn't got us any closer to independence. So forget about marching. We better start thinking and acting. Well, Muriel Casals, then after all this, she went in parliament in something called Junts pel Sí that got 62 seats. Then another indie party called CUP got 10 seats, and that made a total of 72. And they had promised us that they would declare independence if they had a majority of 68. So they lied to us. We gave them a mandate that, following the footsteps set by the International Court of Justice in the case of Kosovo, that was given in the 22nd of July of 2010, which it's actually the same month that the first million march in Barcelona happened. So things were gathering momentum. They promised they would deliver independence. They said nothing about referendums because, let's make it clear, referendums don't bring independence. They don't. UDI brings independence. Referendum is something that has a triple objective. It keeps NATO member states together, like Canada with Quebec, like UK with Scotland, like Spain with Catalonia. That's objective one. Second, it keeps the imagination, the pretense that we live in democracy. Oh, we did a referendum and people voted no. No, they didn't vote no. It just rigged. The system don't play dice. The system wants these countries to stay together, and the independence of Scotland is only in the interest of the people of Scotland, not its running elite, not those that are members of the Privy Council, not them. They have very nice life in London. Ask Angus Brendan McNeill or Stuart Hosey if it's nice life in London or is it not. So they don't really want independence. They want to milk independence. Just remember the book of Alex Salmon, which says the dream will never die. Well, I'm sorry, but independence for a lot of us is not a dream. It's an objective we are ready and willing to risk everything to get. It's not a dream to milk our illusions and to have very nice paid jobs and lots of attention and lots of nice life riding on our dreams. It's not a dream, it's an objective. So the second objective is to let us think that there's democracy in Europe when there's not. Well, then the third objective is to disappoint us for 50 years. You've seen the marches in Catalonia, 1.5 million, 2 million, human chain. We voted in 700 non-binding referendums in cities. We do a participation process and we win 85 to 15. So we do everything, and then we do a referendum and we lose it. So the message is very clear. If 2 million marching wasn't enough, we have to wait 50 years till maybe we're 4 million marching, which will never happen. Referendums don't bring independence. It's the placebo. It's the pill to keep us inside this matrix, this Brave New World, this 1984, this The Truman Show. It's never been so easy to win a peaceful revolution. You just go and watch 4 films and then you understand how they're playing with us. So referendums don't bring independence. So the question is, we had to have UDI. Then we had a very strange thing where Carles Puigdemont becomes president when nobody had voted for him. That's something we're going to explain if nothing happens to us in the next days, to the people of Catalonia and to the world, how we had a velvet coup, not very different from Gough Whitlam in Australia in 1975, where there was an inside coup in the same party and Carles Puigdemont voted only for 36 people, became president by surprise. Well, surprise to the grassroots people, of course, not surprise to the powers that be, that had been scheming for it at least 10 years before, when somebody was threatened and paved the way for Carles Puigdemont. So very shortly, this Muriel Casals was in charge of the Constitutional Commission in Parliament. That was the 26th of January. Remember, no referendum. They were supposed to declare independence in 18 months, but no referendum, only after declaring independence. That's the 26th of January 2016. Then the 30th, she says that the roadmap stays as it was planned, and there's a television video saying that the 30th of January 2016. The same day, she goes to the radio and says, we should expect the weirdest things from Spain. We don't know how they'll react at this moment. 30th of January, the road stays the same. We can expect everything from Spain. And that same day, a bicycle in Barcelona ran her over. And 2 weeks after that, bam, she's dead. But no investigation, nothing. Nobody has commented on a lot of strange things. And remember, we don't have the burden of proof. We don't live in a democracy, so we cannot expect here the rules that apply if we were living in democracy. We don't. We live in a dictatorship that never stopped being one. Remember, tight and well tight. It's Francoism without Franco. Well, the facts is as follows. She enters the hospital. She is conscious. We have proof of that. In her biography, it says that for the first hours she was conscious. Then, 10 days after that, there's a communication from saying that herself in person and her family are thankful for the attention she received. And then 3 days after that, she's declared dead by very relevant people who, in Twitter, they declare her death. Then at night, in the 13th of February, but then it happened not to be true. And then she was declared dead 3 hours after that. And most media had declared her dead when she was not. Can you imagine JFK being declared dead 3 hours before he was shot? Or being announced at the 9/11 3 hours before the planes hit the tower, somebody announced that a plane had hit. Strange, isn't it? But there was more to come, because then Catalan TV3, the public television that is run by the government, said that she had been in a coma since she entered the hospital, which first is a lie because her biography says she was not, so it's lie on one side, but 4 days before that, there's a communique saying that herself and the family thanks people for the attention. Well, people in a coma are not known to sign declarations like that, so there's something totally weird here. But on top of that, there's 2 articles from the same person, Matthew Tree, an Englishman, that is very known in Catalonia because he speaks Catalan. It's very easy to infiltrate Catalonia. When some foreigner learns Catalan instead of learning Spanish, we all fall for it, and we are he's our idol, and we admire him, and whatever. Because we don't realize that the people who speak better languages are spies or agents. They get the best teachers. And this guy made 2 articles. One in El Punt Avui, which is run by one of the best friends of Carles Puigdemont, the president of Catalonia. And another article in Catalonia Today, which one day we'll go into detail, but is run by no less than Marcela Topor, the wife of the Catalan president. Okay, so this Matthew Tree, which I took to be a friend of mine, but later I discovered he wasn't, makes 2 articles in which he lies blatantly, saying how normal is to die in Barcelona, run over by a bicycle, which is totally not true. And that, for me, is covering up for a state murder. In the meantime, a referendum that was nowhere in the roadmap has appeared. And you Scottish people, like Quebecois before us, and like Catalans, we're going to learn soon. Referendums don't bring independence. Was it necessary to murder Muriel Casals to give us a referendum? In my opinion, yes. But the worst thing is that no media has commented on any of this, which on itself proves that she didn't die of an accident. Because all these things are put together. I'm not even a journalist. How can it be that in a country where a lot of people suspect of this death, remember, we've had Franco, we've got a criminal squad organized by government 20 years ago, which was called GAL. We've had Philip V genociding people in Catalonia 300 years ago. We've had Spanish Inquisition. We've had all these things, and normally, if we had not been brainwashed by media, the immediate reaction when somebody dies run over by a bike, and it happens to be the person who's risking the Spanish unity, normally we would think something strange is. They've made us think that Russia is not a democracy. Can you imagine the case? A fierce oppositor of Putin dies run over with a bicycle in Moscow. And there's 2 articles defending how normal it is to run over, die because a bicycle runs you over. And they're written, one in the newspaper of a friend of Putin, and the other in a newspaper set up by Putin himself and who's directed by his wife. Everybody would be crying that it's murder everywhere in the world. Well, I think Muriel Casals was murdered. And as far as I know, I was the first person to say it. And the first person to say that Muriel Casals was possibly or probably murdered. That's a hunger strike a few months after that. And when he goes to a hospital, he gets wrongly diagnosed, chemically tortured, kept there for a few months, and pushed to commit suicide, which I clarify again, I'll never commit. Well, it's your decision, but for me, that is a clear definition of what a dictatorship is. I hope I haven't bored you to death. I want to thank you for bearing with me. We're going to start a revolution in Catalonia, and it's going to be the people who's going to make it. We're putting together the people that have been marginalized by this criminal regime, and we also have people who are regretting belonging to this regime from the inside, which are giving us information, and some of them are just scared of coming out. We are organizing ourselves. We're going to do the thing at the right time, and we're going to demolish this criminal regime from the inside. And that's going to happen in the next months. And if some of us don't see it to the end, it doesn't matter, because better people than us will finish the job. And Catalonia will be first. And then Scotland will realize that it's the same script and it's the same trick. There's nothing better to avoid independence of a country than put a so-called independentist president that doesn't want independence. And that's happened to Catalonia, and that's happened to Scotland. In the next week, we're going to blow your minds with the things nobody has told you about Scotland and Catalonia. Thanks. Let's do this. Guanyarem.
This has been another update from the Catalan Independentist Resistance from Radio Hadrian. Remember that you can follow us on social media, either on Facebook, YouTube, our Twitter account, Instagram, Google, Telegram, and also on iVoox.